The Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert are southern Africa's oldest inhabitants. They have lived in this ancient landscape for tens of thousands of years. Botswana's Central Kalahari Game Reserve was created in 1961 to protect both the Bushmen and the game they rely on. Only in the 1980s did evidence of the vast diamond wealth lying beneath the desert sands emerge. The reserve lies in the middle of the richest diamond-producing area in the world, and at least one major deposit has been found there, at a Bushman community called Hope. An active search is underway for more diamonds elsewhere in the reserve. The mining giant De Beers retains the right to the diamond deposit at Hope and has said that it hopes to mine it in the future. Soon after the discovery of the diamonds, government ministers entered the reserve to tell the Bushmen that they would have to leave their lands because of the diamond finds. Survival met with ministers at the time and asked its supporters to lobby the Botswana government for the recognition of the Bushmen's right to live on their ancestors' lands. The government repeatedly promised that no Bushmen would be forced out against their will. Despite their promises, the first Bushmen were evicted in 1997.
I first went to the CKGR, the Central Kalahari Game Reserve, in 1998. While we were there, they'd arranged for us to see the Bushmen doing a hunt. Suddenly 2 lorries arrived. In the back of the lorries were several Bushmen, looking rather bemused, I thought, and their houses, that's to say long poles and thatching grass and so on. And they were being apparently trucked somewhere. So I said, what's going on? And they said, well, these people are being relocated. They've been asked by the government, told by the government they should leave and go to the new Kadi, which was the sort of reserve set up just outside the CKGR. And so I then began to inquire. Being a journalist, I thought, well, what's going on? So I went and asked people in Malapa, and they said, oh, they're trying to get us all out. They're asking us all to go, and they offer us money and say, one woman said to me, for example, we'll give you everything, we'll pour money into your laps and so on, and we'll take you to a new place. And she said, I don't want to go. None of us want to go. We all want to live here. This is where I was born and I was suckled and grew up and so on, and I don't want to leave.
The government made life increasingly difficult for the Bushmen still living in the reserve. Many were arrested for hunting to feed their families, while others were tortured and beaten by police and wildlife officials. In 2002, the government forced virtually all remaining Bushmen from their lands in a wave of evictions. Rations were stopped, and the Bushman's borehole was destroyed.
This year they began moving the Bushmen out in earnest. At first, all we found were destroyed villages, places where the grass huts had been pulled down. The San have so little that every possession is precious, yet time and again we found things they'd left behind them. It looked as though they'd had to leave in a hurry.
What's so strange about this is the amount of effort the government's gone to destroy this village. It's not as though the inhabitants here were any threat to them. They were completely harmless. It's almost as if the government wanted to wipe all memory of this village off the face of the earth.
And when the government says it wants the Bushmen out, it means business. We came across a well, a borehole in fact, tapping into water deep below the desert surface. Some months ago, men were sent in to smash the wellhead. They did a thorough job. Instead of the stuff of life, nothing but sand.
The Bushmen launched a court case against the government to reclaim their constitutional rights to live on their lands. Survival helped the Bushmen prepare their case and stepped up its international campaign. After 2 years of delays, the court finally began to hear the Bushmen's case in 2004. During this time, some Bushmen gradually returned to the reserve and began to rebuild their communities in the face of continuing persecution from wildlife guards and officials. Even though the borehole had been capped and was now of no use, and the Bushmen were forbidden from hunting, the government prevented them from taking food or water into the reserve. At least one Bushman woman died of dehydration and starvation. Survival continued campaigning against the eviction, persecution and torture of the Bushmen. Demonstrations were organised in the UK at events attended by Botswana's President Mochai and government ministers.
Will you let the Bushmen go home, Mr. Mochai?
Where's home? Home is in Botswana.
In the CKGR? No. Will you let them go home there?
No. No, they won't.
Are they not allowed to go back to their ancestral land?
Central Kalahari Game Reserve is for animals, not people.
But it was originally set up for them, as a home for them.
This gentleman doesn't like the life. He likes to live the life of Yola.
Well, that's very nice, but some of them would like to go back to their lands, Mr. Mokai.
You don't know. I am their countryman, and not you. I know better.
In 2005, a third wave of evictions saw most of the remaining Bushmen forced out of their villages, some of them for the third time, and into the resettlement camps outside the reserve. The Bushmen described camps, such as New Kade, as places of death. It was here that they first experienced widespread depression, alcoholism, and diseases including AIDS, all largely unknown in the reserve.
2 Kalahari Bushmen have flown from Botswana to criticise their government for taking away their traditional land.
Survival kept up pressure on Botswana's government through its international campaign, reminding the public of the causes of the Bushmen's plight. The morning of the opening of the De Beers flagship Old Bond Street store, the shop's giant poster of Iman, the supermodel and face of De Beers, was replaced with a poster of a Bushman woman.
Hello and welcome to this special edition of Reporters.
The positive media coverage of the Bushman's story continued, and on the morning of December the 13th, 2006, the world's press descended on Botswana's High Court to hear the final ruling from the panel of 3 judges. By this time, survival supporters had been helping the Bushmen to fund their legal fight for more than 2 years. Botswana's poorest citizens had brought the longest and most expensive court case in the country's history. Ogiek hunter-gatherers travelled from Kenya to lend their support.
Solidarity forever.
The Bushmen had made the journey from the resettlement camps with help from Survival and the Bushman organisation First People of the Kalahari. The judges spent more than 6 hours delivering their ruling. They ruled that the evictions were unlawful and unconstitutional, and that the Bushmen have the right to live on their ancestral land inside the Central Kalahari Game Reserve. The court also ruled that the Bushmen have the right to hunt and gather in the reserve, and should not have to apply for permits to enter it. One judge said the government's refusal to allow the Bushmen to hunt was tantamount to condemning the residents of the reserve to death by starvation.
But it's whether we can return to the reserve. That's what we have always wanted and what the court has now confirmed we can do.
However, the judges also said that the government is not obliged to provide services to Bushmen in the reserve. The atmosphere after the judgment was electric, with Bushmen singing and dancing outside the court. Over the following days, survival campaigners and the Bushman's lawyer travelled to the resettlement camps and then onto the villages inside the reserve, where there were scenes of jubilation as the Bushmen celebrated their victory. The Bushmen asked the campaigners to thank all of survival supporters, without whom this victory could never have come about. This historic ruling represents the first time indigenous land rights have been recognised in Botswana and creates a landmark precedent in international law. The judgment stands to benefit tribal peoples throughout the world, wherever rights are denied, land stolen and lives extinguished.